Okay, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I have muted everybody for now. If you would use the chat button, if you have any questions or would like to ask anything throughout the presentation, then you can go ahead and do so on the chat button. And then we can go from there. If you're using your phone and you're unable to use the chat, I can unmute you at the end. And then if you have any questions, you can let me know. My name is Jordan Hellman. I am the dietitian in the Decatur office. Rebecca, the Fort Worth dietitian, is on vacation for spring break, so she's not here tonight. But we are going to go over protein compliance and the possibility of weight regain. So it's a question that I get asked a lot, and we clearly focus on protein a lot in this office. So just a little bit about what we're going to talk about, all about protein. So we're going to really get into what protein is, some good sources of protein, different forms of protein, why it's important. We're going to talk about how protein correlates to weight loss and why it is required in that case. And then the possibility of weight regain without following dietary compliance after surgery. So what is protein? So the definition is an essential nutrient found in every cell of the body. So protein is not limited to one particular part of the body. It is found all throughout your body, and it is important for a lot of different functions. It's made up of amino acids, which are basically the building blocks for growing and maintaining the body's different tissues. So this includes like your muscles, tendons, blood vessels, and then skin, hair, and nails. It's also very important in keeping the body systems functioning properly. So like synthesizing and maintaining different enzymes and hormones. So overall, it's a really important part of the body. It's really important after bariatric surgery as well. So the importance of protein after bariatric surgery, we're just going to break it down into some what its different responsibilities are. So it's responsible for rebuilding or building tissue and repairing tissue in the body. So when you think initially right after surgery, and we may have people from all different parts of this process on this support group, but protein is going to be important whenever it comes to wound healing. And so we really encourage protein initially in the healing stages after surgery. It's also really important to keep hair, skin, bones, and nails healthy. So this is a really large question I get all the time about hair loss. How do I keep my hair from falling out? Well, during periods of rapid weight loss, it's really important to make sure you're getting adequate amounts of protein to slow hair loss. Within 3 to 6 months post-op, whenever you're seeing your most rapid weight loss, it's going to be inevitable that you lose some hair. Protein, like I had mentioned previously, is important for all of those different things. So hair is not really on the higher list of things that are important as compared to muscles and like your heart being a muscle. So, but protein is important to slow hair loss. Protein is also really important to help keep you feeling full longer. So it takes a lot more time to digest protein than some of the other macronutrients. So if you eat a piece of protein, you'll feel longer because your body is digesting it in all different parts, like your stomach, the digestion's taking place there. It moves into the intestines and it's still digesting. So it's going to keep you feeling really full a lot longer than like a simple carbohydrate. Like if you were to eat a piece of white bread, that breaks down relatively quickly. You'll see elevations in your blood sugars, and then ultimately it's broken down and utilized, and then you're hungry again. So protein's just metabolized a little different, and you'll feel full longer. So the biggest thing that we focus on in the clinic, protein-wise, and why it's so important, is to build muscle and fuel fat burning. So whenever you're in the weight loss process, so you're after surgery or if it's before surgery, whenever you're losing weight, you lose both fat and muscle. So especially in those periods of very rapid weight loss, you're going to be losing both. Ultimately, whenever you're coming in for like your 3, 6, 12-month follow-up appointments, and then thereon after, we'd like for you to see some preservation of the muscle tissue and continued loss of fat, if not gain of muscle. It's very normal to lose a pretty significant amount. Well, it's normal to lose muscle in the first 6 months or so whenever you're rapidly losing weight. But we want to preserve the muscle, and so in order to do that, you have to consume adequate protein in your diet. Muscle burns more calories than fat, and I know that's something the exercise specialist talks about. So ultimately, we're going to really focus more on that piece of, other than the other important parts of protein, but more along the lines of building the muscle and fueling the metabolism. So some different sources of protein. Basically here, I know that we've talked about protein in the office. If you've met with me, we've definitely discussed different sources of protein. So there's a lot of different sources. Your body makes new proteins and amino acids, but protein is not stored in your body like fat is. So you have to consume protein through foods. The amino acids that I mentioned earlier that are required for the amino acids, which are the building blocks of the protein molecules, some of those you can't get from your body. Some of them they must come from food sources. So there's 9 amino acids that are essential that you must get from food sources, but not all protein sources contain all of those amino acids. So that's kind of why I have this broken down into 2 different groups. Complete protein sources are going to be sources that contain all the essential amino acids. So if you're eating those foods, then you're getting all the amino acids that are required in your body. So like meat, so chicken, beef, pork, fish, dairy products like milk, yogurt, cheese, eggs, tofu, soy, so there are quinoa. So there are some that are not that, like if you were vegetarian, that you could consume. But there are also a lot of incomplete protein sources. So they are missing either one or more essential amino acids. So if you were to solely eat these protein sources, you would not be getting one or more of the essential amino acids that is important for some function in your body. So nuts and seeds. So if you eat a lot of peanuts, that's not a complete protein source. If you eat a lot of beans, that's not a complete protein source. Grains, like whole grains, nut butters, green peas, all of those things are excellent sources of protein, but when standing alone, they aren't a complete source of protein. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't combine foods to get all the amino acids. So like mixing peanut butter on a piece of like wheat toast, that would make it a complete protein source, because one thing has a certain number of amino acids and the other one has one that maybe the other one's missing, if that makes sense. So all of these are excellent sources of proteins. You can get protein from both meat and vegetable sources. Ultimately, we want you just making really good choices and eating protein over some of the other food groups. And we'll go on to discuss that a little bit more as well. Okay. A question I get quite a bit is going to be in regards to protein and supplements. So in the pre-op diet, before you have surgery, and then for the first at least year post-op, most people do have to rely on some sort of protein supplement in order to meet their protein goals. So protein goals are going to be something we're going to go over a little bit later, but at your initial consultation, you should have been given a goal, a number to strive for when it comes to protein. Now, I don't know if y'all have been looking at different protein powders and things of that nature, but they have a lot of different sources of protein, and there are some that are better than others. Ultimately, the gold standard when it comes to protein in oral nutrition supplements would be whey protein isolate. So the whey protein isolate is going to contain less lactose. So lactose is sometimes difficult for patients to digest after surgery, and some people are just intolerant to lactose all the time. But the isolate, it is digested more to where there's less lactose. It normally provides protein in like a larger quantity of protein in a smaller volume. It's typically easier to mix. It has a cleaner taste, so not so much a protein taste. So some of the examples that you may have gotten like in the office would have been the Bariatric Fusion. So that protein supplement is one that is a whey protein isolate. Premier clear liquid, so most of your clear liquid proteins are going to be the isolate. And then any kind of other medical grade protein like the Unjury powder or Bariatric Advantage, those are going to be whey protein isolates. Whey protein concentrate is a little bit lower in the concentration of protein than the isolate. It has more lactose in it, so it may be a little bit more difficult for people to digest if they have developed a sensitivity to lactose, and the percentage of protein may vary. Egg protein, like egg white protein and soy protein, are really good alternatives for patients who have difficult times with milk-based products. Egg white protein is a very easily digested protein powder. I've had a lot of patients really like it. It just doesn't keep you as full as long because typically it's made with just egg whites, so it eliminates the fat component that would be found in a milk protein. So going back to when we discussed incomplete protein sources, there are protein powders made with incomplete protein sources. So when you're on that pre-op diet, I would like for you to try to avoid incomplete protein source protein powders. So like pea protein, rice protein, and then anything that's collagen protein, they're okay to use as supplements whenever you're consuming other forms of protein. But I do want you to try to avoid them when it comes to like if that's your sole form of nutrition is protein supplements. Okay, so how does protein tie into weight loss? So consuming adequate protein helps to maintain your lean muscle. So whenever you are eating after surgery and you're not able to get your protein in, but yet still what you're eating, but you're not eating adequate amounts, your body is going to utilize your muscle stores as energy for your body. So that decreases your muscle, which overall decreases your metabolism and can slow your weight loss. So by eating adequate amounts of protein, you'll be maintaining your lean muscle, or that would be the goal, which would help to maintain or increase your metabolism. In the first few months post-op, when you're rapidly losing weight, it is normal to see some muscle loss as well, because you just aren't able to consume the amount of protein that you need to maintain your lean muscle, because your caloric intake is decreased so much. That being said, it's really normal to experience a couple of stalls throughout this process as well, weight loss stalls. Once you lose a significant amount of weight, your body has to kind of normalize and you have to change things up, and then you should see that weight continue to come off. Again, protein takes a longer time to digest, so that helps you to stay full longer. If you're eating your protein first, and at every meal and snack, then ultimately you shouldn't be overdoing it on other sources, so other like of carbs or fats. I get a lot of questions on how many calories should I have, or how many grams of carbs should I have, but my answer is always going to be, as long as you're eating protein first, and that's the largest portion of every meal and snack, you really shouldn't have the space after surgery to be overdoing it on other things. There are some variables there, but if you're following behavior changes that we recommend, then you should see a decrease in caloric intake. So these are the charts that we use to determine how much protein you need. So this is all going to be found in your handbook, so this shouldn't be really anything new. If you're a new patient and you haven't come to your appointment yet for your initial consult, you'll get a handbook and we will discuss how much protein you need. We base our protein needs on height, and your ideal body weight is adjusted. So then it estimates the number of protein you need. Now, this number is going to be your overall goal at first. Whenever you lose weight, that protein number doesn't change, but if you were to increase your activity significantly, it will. So like a 5'6" female, ultimately, we'd recommend they strive to get 90 grams of protein a day. So this chart, you can find it in your handbook if you forgot what your protein goal is. Okay, so making dietary changes for success. So what should you do to maintain your weight loss? This goes back to the behavior modifications that we strive for you to do after surgery. Ultimately, consume protein first and at every meal and snack. I've said this already, when you eat protein first, you shouldn't be overdoing it on other things. In order for you to get to 90 grams of protein, that's your goal, then you're going to have to eat it at every meal and snack. I do want you to continue to consume vegetables, making sure that you are trying to have some sort of non-starchy vegetable throughout the day. It's really good source. They're a really good source of fiber. They're low in calories, so that shouldn't be contributing to any excess starches or carbs that you would be worried about. Eating breakfast is a really big thing, so not skipping any meals. That's what that comes down to, eating breakfast and eating consistently. Breakfast meals are a lot of times are carb-based, so you have like pastries and donuts and bagels and toast, all of those things that you would eat at breakfast. We want you to really try to make sure you always have a protein there. It's easy to get behind on your protein goal every day if you don't eat breakfast. And that comes down to the consistent eating every 3 to 4 hours, want you making sure you're eating some kind of protein. It's the only way to meet your goal. Otherwise, if you're not eating consistently, that's something I hear a lot, like I eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, or I'm not hungry. I understand that I understand not being hungry or having like set meal times, but you're not able to take in enough food at those times to get to where you need to be. And the consistent eating and increasing your calories and all of that, it seems like something you wouldn't necessarily want to do, but in order for like the exercise that you're doing to work, and for you to see the weight loss and for you to see the muscle mass retained, you've got to eat consistently. Eating slowly, that is a big one as well. So making sure you're eating a meal over about 20 minutes. Now we're going to get into some things not to do in a minute, and you can eat too slowly, but I want you to try to take at least 20 minutes to eat a meal. So make sure you're eating some, slowly, put your fork down between bites, but try to cap it at 20 minutes. Eat your protein first, then good sources of vegetables, and then good sources of carbohydrates. And then last, just make sure you're consuming at least 64 ounces of hydrating fluids a day. That could be water, Crystal Light, Powerade Zero, Vitamin Water Zero, decaffeinated tea, things like that. Just making sure that they're hydrating fluids. So a lot of times after so long, after surgery, you have a pretty good period of where you're losing pretty consistently no matter what you eat. And that is kind of the honeymoon phase. Well, at some point, it becomes a little bit more difficult. You have this honeymoon phase, and that is a great time to make sure you're making changes. Make sure that you are doing all of those things, eating slow, eating your protein, counting your protein. Make sure you're doing all those things so that when you get to the point where you've got 10 pounds left to lose or 15 pounds left to lose, it becomes real work at that point. And if you haven't been making any changes and you haven't been following the behavior modifications that we suggest, then you ultimately could see a stall that lasts a lot longer than you want, or you could see yourself begin to regain some weight. So a lot of the times, the listed things are what I see for people regaining weight. So they've kind of gone back to their old habits, and now they're doing a lot of carbohydrates or sweets, and they're eating high sugar foods. They're drinking their liquids, so drinking sweet tea or soda or sugary coffee. They're not eating consistently. They've started skipping meals and eating one time a day. They're drinking during meals, drinking 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after meals, or they've developed grazing patterns. So what do we do about these things? There's quite a few things we can do, actually. So with excessive carbohydrate intake, ultimately, in the office, we try to get you to, we encourage you to keep a food log, and we use an app called Bariatric, and if anybody has questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. But you can use this Bariatric app and log your foods, and then myself or Rebecca can get on and review your food choices, and we can make some suggestions. So if we see that you have really gone into making some changes, like you've started really eating carbohydrates or high sugar foods, then we would recommend doing a pouch reset. So a pouch reset is not meant to shrink your pouch. It is meant to get you off of carbohydrates. So basically what it comes down to is it's very much like the pre-op diet. So whenever you're on the pre-op diet, you're doing protein drinks, and you're doing water and broth and sugar-free Jell-O and sugar-free popsicles, and it's a really rough week that leads you to surgery. Well, whenever you're after surgery, it's possible to really start increasing your carb intake, and you kind of get back to the same point. And by doing the pouch reset, I typically recommend people just do the pre-op diet. So you do that pre-op diet for 4 or 5 days, do the protein drinks. It kind of just kicks your cravings, gets you away from the sugar, and then you can get back on track with meeting your protein goal. Liquid calories, try to really push this in all of our pre-op appointments and meetings. With like a sleeve, if you have a gastric sleeve as your procedure, if you are drinking a ton of soda or sweet tea or sugary coffee or Kool-Aid, things that have a ton of calories, that procedure is strictly it's a restrictive procedure. It is not malabsorptive. So you could drink on those things all day long, and you will absorb all those calories, and you will be taking in way more than if you were to be skipping out on the liquids that contain a bunch of sugar. So you can really be getting a lot of empty calories. So that's a big one that we really, really try to focus on. I want you making sure that you're making some compromises there. Like if you normally drink a bunch of sweet tea, maybe go try to switch to an artificial sweetener, try to use Splenda. Allow yourself one sweet tea a week if it's not something you're willing to really give up, but just make some compromises there, because that one can really sabotage your weight loss. Same thing kind of goes with skipping meals. Whenever you don't eat, you are really, really confusing your metabolism. It's not sure when it's going to get your body's not sure when it's going to get its next meal, so hangs on to everything you put inside it. So if you're eating more consistently, that doesn't tend to happen. So eat every 3 hours, and again, just really try to focus on the protein at those meals. Drinking before a meal. If you drink after you have a sleep done, if you drink before a meal, then you don't have any room for food. That becomes a big deal whenever you have like a scheduled lunch at work, and you have 30 minutes, and then you drank water before lunch, and then you can't eat during that time period. Well, that may cause you to overeat later, or to make some bad choices, or not optimal choices later with grazing patterns, or eating something that's really quick out of a vending machine, something like that. Don't want to drink during meals or after meals, because it can act like a funnel. Your stomach can kind of act like a funnel and push the foods through, which leaves your stomach ultimately empty, and you could refill it before you get that sensation that you're full. Or it can have other effects and cause the food to come back up, which you don't want that to happen either. As for grazing patterns, this is probably one of the biggest things that I see as a as a reason for weight regain. Whenever patients come in a few months post-op, maybe 6 to 12 months post-op, and they aren't able to really eat a whole lot at one time. They have really good restriction, but they don't ever really feel that really like the full sensation, because they may, they may make a plate of food and then they eat it over a 2-hour period. I always use the example, if you go to a restaurant and you're sitting there with a friend and you're visiting for a couple of hours, it may take you 2 hours, but if you sat there and you take a bite every couple of minutes, you could potentially eat that entire plate over a couple hours. It may be different than before surgery when you could eat it in a lot quicker time period, but ultimately you would still be getting the same amount of calories without ever really feeling that full sensation. So we want to kind of try to kick grazing patterns and really just try to stick to like a 20 to 30 minute meal time, and then you're done eating after that time period until your next meal or snack. Okay, so ultimately there's a lot of reasons why you could potentially regain weight post-surgery. What we're covering today is really just the dietary part of it and dietary compliance, but there are other reasons why you could potentially gain weight. There's medical reasons, there's metabolic reasons, there's like reasons with your sleeve if you were to overeat consistently and stretch it and things like that. But ultimately what we're covering is the dietary compliance part of it, and weight regain is possible if you don't follow those recommended behavior modifications. It's just a tool, and you have to use your tool to be successful and make the changes for a healthier lifestyle. So does anybody have any questions about weight regain or protein? Can anybody use the chat feature? I haven't ever had anybody chat in this time around. I can unmute you. I think I got it. Okay. One question is, are sparkling waters a no-no? So as from a hydration standpoint, sparkling water is fine, but after surgery, the carbonation can cause a lot of discomfort, and we really try to discourage you from using carbonated beverages, as over time it could potentially stretch out your pouch. So I would say it's kind of along the lines of one of those things that I'd like for you to keep at a very, very moderate, and definitely use it in moderation. I prefer you just drink regular water. You can always get a sparkling water and let it go flat, and then drink it, that's fine. But ultimately it's still carbonated, so I'd like to discourage use of those on a regular basis. I have a question on week 3 with refried beans. Can we use another cheese other than mozzarella? Yes, you can. Mozzarella is just listed because it is a white cheese, which is typically a lower fat option. So you definitely can use another kind of cheese unmelted on your refried beans if you prefer. Another question was, is liquid Premier the same as an isolate? So the clear liquid Premier protein, like the fruit punch flavored or the mango flavored, those are considered a whey protein isolate. The milky Premiers are not. They are actually a protein blend. They are still a good source of protein. They definitely need to be used as a supplement, but they are not a protein isolate, so the protein may not be as readily available and digested and absorbed. There's really not a whole lot of research that I'm aware of in regards to just Premier in particular, but it is a blend. Another question is, can you have Yoplait light yogurt, or what do I recommend? Light and Fit. So the Dannon Light and Fit actually is a Greek yogurt, and that is fine for you to do. It doesn't have to be just like a plain Greek yogurt. You can do the flavored Greek yogurt. The reason we don't really like for you to do a whole lot of just the regular yogurt is it's typically higher in sugar and doesn't have as much protein in it. You can use like an unflavored protein powder and mix it with yogurt, but ultimately I'd rather you use a Greek yogurt because of the protein content. But you can do a Yoplait Light. I would just rather you add protein to it. Okay. Another question is, I'm 10 months post-op and I still struggle with balance of 90 grams of protein and 64 ounces of water. What should I push more of, water or protein? So this is a question that I actually get quite a bit. It is difficult to make sure that you are getting your water in and your protein in. Whenever you come for your follow-up appointments, make sure you follow up. That's also a really large part of this. We check your labs. We see if there's other reasons why you're not losing. You meet with the exercise specialist, and they're able to do your measurements and get, capture your muscle mass and all of that and see what you've lost muscle versus fat-wise. It's difficult. It really, it is difficult to make sure that you're getting the protein and the fluids in. You could always try adding like an unflavored, like Genipro or something like that, to a Crystal Light packet, like water, because that protein powder doesn't typically have as much of a flavor. You can always, I a lot of times ask people, whenever they first start drinking in the morning, a lot of times people don't start drinking until it's a little bit later on in the day, or like after they've had breakfast. And if you could always wake up a little bit earlier, or maybe you spend a little bit of time like where you're getting ready, or a little bit of time in the morning where you're not doing either. And it may be beneficial for you to maybe try to really push fluids in that time period. I can definitely, I definitely recommend logging your food in that scenario too, whenever you're having a difficult time doing both. And see if there's a place where you can make a change, and see if there's like maybe a time that you aren't doing anything, or, keeping timers on your phone. That Bariatric app I was talking about really does a good job of making sure you're drinking fluids, because that one's really difficult. It's easier to remember to eat than it is to drink water. Okay, what protein powders are isolates? So the ones that I had listed on here, the Bariatric Fusion, Bariatric Advantage, those are protein isolates. I can make a list of the ones that you can get at like stores that are protein isolates. But if you walk into a GNC and you're reading on the back of a protein powder, it should say whey protein isolate as the first or second ingredient in the protein powder. There are a lot of protein isolates, whey protein isolate options. Anything that's a clear liquid is going to be a whey protein isolate. I know Ice Up Here makes a lot of clear liquid, and they also have milky whey protein isolates. A lot of the premixed options, not all of them. Undri is a really good option that you can get that's a whey protein isolate, and they make a ready to drink, but like the Premier is not a whey protein isolate. Okay, I am 18 months post-op and gaining weight. I lost 90 pounds and gained 13 back. What do I need to do? So I think the best thing for me to tell you to do in this scenario would be to make sure you're keeping a food log, and we can definitely review it. I encourage anybody who's having a difficult time with weight regain, or if you're losing too much, or if you have stalled out, the best thing for me as the dietitian to look at is to look at your food log. And I really recommend all of you download the Bariatric app and really start tracking your food in there. And the reason I say that is you can connect it with the program. The connection code is 31302, and I can send that in an email as well, or if anybody wants information on that and they don't have it already, I would be happy to help you with that. But it allows me to look at your food log easier than like a MyFitnessPal. And it really focuses on protein, and it's made specifically for bariatric patients, so it's a really nice app. I would definitely recommend using the food log and let me look at it, and then I can definitely see if there's some different areas that we can work on. Every single person is going to have a different, well, not every person, but most of the time you're going to see different reasons why the weight regain is occurring. Maybe it's a grazing pattern. Maybe it's starting to eat, a lot more carbs. Maybe you've started putting things in your coffee and haven't realized it. Everybody has a different thing that, maybe they've started adding back in, or maybe you've decreased your exercise or decreased your fluids. But keeping a food log is a really good way for me to look through everything and see if there's any dietary changes that I would recommend. But you can definitely come in for a follow-up also. We can draw labs if the nurse practitioner thinks that's warranted, and see if there's anything from a different standpoint as well. I would definitely recommend, if you want me to go ahead and if you want to start logging in the food log, I'd be happy to contact you in a couple of weeks and see if there's any suggestions I can make. If you'll just send me your information. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm going to send the code for that app in the chat box. The Bariatric app is a free app you can download on the Google Store. You can download it from the App Store on your iPhones. To connect with the program, the code is 31302. So that is, I've sent that in the chat. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so I have a question. My husband's doing keto, and the meats are usually with cream cheese, butter, bacon. If I eat my small portion, will that have a negative effect on my meals? So the keto diet really is not bariatric friendly, just because it's a high fat, moderate protein. Now, ultimately, if you're still doing high protein and you're saying like he's eating those foods and you want to know if that's okay for you to do too, it is going to make your meals a little higher in calories and a little bit higher in like saturated fats, without necessarily getting you into a ketogenic state. However, if you're doing the keto diet, that's really important to follow that as it's written. But I definitely discourage bariatric patients to do the keto diet. I'd rather you really focus on doing a higher protein, low carb diet, moderate fat, instead of a high fat, moderate protein, low carb. So that's kind of the difference with those two. And there actually is a blog on our website about the keto diet. But if you're just asking in terms of if it's okay for your meals, it would be something that I would say definitely it's going to make your calorie intake higher to meal. So it's not necessarily going to be great if you're still trying to see loss. If you're trying to see gain or maintaining, it will contribute to additional calories. Any other questions? Just remember, we're always here if you have any questions. If you ever need, me and Rebecca are always really available to help you, making sure you're getting your protein in and making sure that you are on the right track diet-wise. Exercise specialists are excellent with wanting to help you with the exercise portion of this. But it is kind of a triad to see the best weight loss with the fluids and the exercise and the protein. Now, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Anything else y'all can think of?
Thanks for all your help.
Thank you very much. All right, well, if there's anything you can do, just feel free to contact the office, and y'all have a great evening, okay? Thank you.